the state of the transfer portal in college football. Because the transfer portal is it's a very polarizing topic today in college sports. A lot of different opinions. Some folks say it's horrific. Some people think it's the best thing to ever happen in college sports. I personally believe it's a good thing. And the reason why is because when I was a senior in high school, I played with I'll keep him unnamed. I played with someone who was a 5-star athlete and was committed to a high-profile Pac-12 school. And so signing day comes around. We're getting ready to sign a letter of intent. It's a great day for everybody. He signs. He's fired up. He's wearing his gear. The very next day, his position coach, who I'm assuming he had many a conversation with, who had recruited him, who had probably told him about the vision of what he was going to be when he got to this school, ends up taking a job with a professional football team. And so my man just signed a binding legal document that he's going to go play for this school, and then the person he committed to leaves. So the minute that happened, that, for me, being so close to it, really helped shape my opinion of the need for player mobility and for options for players. But I think we would be remiss if we didn't at least acknowledge that a coach leaving a school and a player leaving a school is not the exact same thing. Yes, when a player leaves a school, they're doing it for their best interest, and they should do it for the betterment of their career and things like that. Same thing with the coach when he takes a job for an NFL team. However, when a coach leaves, there's a buyout in his contract. That's not the case in college football today with players. Now, I would say we're moving closer and closer to that. I think across the board, you're starting to see more contractual language that is going to bind players to schools, and there's going to have to be money that is accounted for if they do leave that school. But this was never the same thing. And my issue isn't the transfer portal. I am very much so in the boat of the portal is a good thing. I'm also at that exact same time saying there's some things about the transfer portal that are pretty imperfect. I think we can all acknowledge that. But as much as there's some things about the portal that are imperfect, I don't think it's the portal in general. I think it's the windows with the portal. I think the windows that we have right now are a little bit diabolical, a little bit of a psychopath kind of approach to it. Because when you look at the two windows we have, you got the winter window, which is give or take 30 days, and you have the spring window, which is 2 weeks that falls more or less around the end of spring football for a lot of teams. Y'all, that is way too long. That's way too long, because if you know you're going in the transfer portal, you know by like October, maybe November. Now, if your coach leaves, that's another discussion, but you don't need 30 days to figure out after the season if you're going to stay at that school or not. You know what the deal is. You know what you're probably making. You probably have a good idea as to what your potential is when it comes to playing time the upcoming season. You know how you feel about that staff. Like, there is a lot that you already know that you can have a pretty educated guess on for the future at that school. You don't need 30 days. Like, staying 30 days to make a decision doesn't help anybody. Doesn't help anybody. And I think if we could shorten that window, that would be tremendous. Same thing with the spring window. Guys know, right? Like, these conversations are happening through personal trainers, through high school coaches. Like, there's a lot of back channeling that's going on here to where you don't need a month and 2 weeks, respectively, for those windows to figure out if you're going to jump in the portal or not. It's nonsense. It's absolute nonsense. The thing with this that I don't appreciate, outside of it just being annoying that we're, tracking, is he going to jump in? He's not jumping in. You hold a staff hostage if you're a player and you may or may not jump in the portal for that 30-day window or that 2-week window. And the reason why that's tough on a staff is because if I don't know if my star linebacker is going to jump in the portal and then on the 29th day of that 30-day window he does, well, the players I have access to go and get from the portal to backfill that position, tell you what, the quality is a lot better on the front end of that portal window than it is on the back end. So you're kind of putting your team in a tough position. Also, if you're a player, let's just be real. It is probably going to provide the most amount of options for you if you announce your intentions sooner rather than later. So let's give it a week on both sides of that. Let's do a week in the winter, do a week in the spring to announce your intentions. Everybody's set, go. All right, cool. We're in the portal. We're looking in the portal. Let's kind of align these timelines. It doesn't make a lot of sense to have a whole week. I don't think it helps anybody. There's a couple of issues people have with the portal. There is a side issue, and there is a main issue. The side issue that a lot of people have is, hey, I don't like the portal because it's taken opportunities from high school kids. You got high school kids that could go play college football, but a transfer that's 22 years old has taken their spot. To me, I would say, and whose fault is that? Whose fault is that a coach would rather take a developed athlete to help their football team today for a year or two than take a high school kid that could help them for 4 years? To me, that's a matter of preference. And that's not me dunking on high school kids. That's just me saying if I'm a head coach at the collegiate level, my job is to win football games. Like, the food that I put on the table, me feeding my family, depends on the performance of those 11 players on the field at their respective time. So if I think that I have a chance to go get somebody better to help me do my job better, I'm going to do that. Is it fair? No. Is life fair? Also no. And also, to be clear here, you have the choice, if you're a coach, to take a player at the high school level that you can develop and have for a longer period of time, or to get a rental for 1 to 2 years. It's a matter of preference. But I don't think anybody needs to have this big issue of like, well, it's bad for the high school kids. If you're a baller as a high school player and you're good enough to go help a team and have a spot, then you're going to be evaluated accordingly. We don't need to give special treatment to high school players versus portal players. Doesn't make sense. That's not how the world works. Is it fair? Again, of course not. But I don't have an issue with it because at the end of the day, people's jobs and real money is changing hands here in this business to where, like, okay, if that's going to help you win football games, take the transfer. It is what it is. It is what it is. It's ugly. It doesn't read great as a headline, but I think it is what it is. Now, the other part of this, that's the side issue. The main issue is, I think, a fair one. And it is, do we really want these kids having total free agency as a high school player or as a college player, rather, where they can jump in the portal 4 different times and they can play at 4 different schools in 4 years? Is that really good for them? And the answer from where I'm coming from is no, of course not. I think you learn a lot of lessons. Everyone's situation is different, but I think you learn a lot of lessons from sticking it out at a certain place and having to endure some adversity, maybe even wait your turn. Like, I don't think dropping at the first sign of I don't like it here necessarily helps you in the long run. But at the exact same time, is it really good for these kids to give them $1 million as a 18 or 22-year-old? Also, probably not. Like, I think the consequence of us allowing so much free will is just like, okay, you know, you have to live with the real life circumstances of whatever you decide to do. Like, I think the portal is a tool. I think it's a great tool. But with any tool, there's going to be some individuals that abuse it, that are going to transfer 4 different times. You know who that hurts in the long run? Them. Hurts those kids in the long run. Like, 16-year-olds get their license and they drive a piece of machinery that can go up to 120 miles an hour. Is that a great idea? It is if you use it correctly. It is if you exercise your free will and make good decisions in an appropriate way. But if you don't, it only hurts yourself. It only hurts yourself. And so I think the label of kids is a little bit misleading. These are adults now. It's not fair, but the genie is out of the bottle. These kids are adults now. They got to make adult decisions. And so I think there needs to be a lot of oversight from the adults in the room, which is something we lobby for a lot on this show. Like, the adults that have the best interests in mind for these kids, for their careers, for their futures, like, as many of those people as we can put in the room for these kids, I think that's what's best. But the portal isn't a bad thing. Just the same way that cars aren't a bad thing. People go speeding on the freeway. People drive 150 miles, and it's not a good idea. It's a bad decision. But again, it's only hurting them in the long run. In the long run, you have to live with your decisions. So, last thing I would say here about the portal is it is by no stretch of the imagination a finished product. Like, I voiced my opinion on the windows and the way that I think those things need to change. I think the spring portal window is going to change sooner rather than later, mostly because we're living in a world where you can go do 15 practices with one team, and then unless you're in the SEC, you can transfer to another school within your conference and take that whole playbook with you, more or less, or at least what you know from that playbook, and take that with you to the other team. So in a lot of ways, you're like, wait, they were just on our team. Now they're on the opposing sideline, and they did a whole 15 practices of install with us. Like, that doesn't help us. I think that whole situation around spring football and the spring portal window is going to change. But again, the transfer portal is nowhere near a finished product. The transfer portal came into existence in 2018. So if we're doing the math here, it is, give or take, less than 6 years old. Y'all, the iPhone, when it was 6 years old, and its sixth year of being in creation, still had a home button on it. You see an iPhone with a home button on it today, you're like, that thing is a dinosaur. That is an ancient artifact. Where'd you find that? So I say all that to say the transfer portal today is going to look a lot different than it does in 5 years from now. It's not a finished product. We're working out the kinks. There may not be a perfect answer or a perfect solution to the issues that we have problems with, but the thesis here is that it's a good thing. It's still evolving. We're still acclimating to the portal era. And at the end of the day, like, we're now giving these high school and college athletes, 18 and 22-year-olds, they are now essentially being treated as adults. It's the adult treatment world. And so however you utilize your free will, just like in life, yes, there is some collateral damage that you would hope is minimized, but at the same time, like, the consequences of your decisions, if you want to transfer 4 times in 4 years, looks like you're going to be able to do that. But who are you really hurting at the end of the day? That's why we need the adults in the room. So the state of the transfer portal, good thing, needs some work, still being worked on. Let's be patient with it. Hey y'all, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.